Hey everyone, this is WobblyWallaby, and today I'll be going through my PvE tier list. I've played many classes in this game, and some classes are great and some are not. Which are the most unfair classes after the release of Rathgricy? Stay tuned to find out. Also, exciting news, this video will have codes to give away. I have 10 C, 5 global, and 5 EU codes. Let me know some of your tier list rankings. I'd love to hear your opinions. Include your Discord ID and which server you play on, such as C, Global, or EU. And the winners will get codes September 8th, 2023. This video is for PvE only. This includes weekly instances and boss hunting. This does not include farming and PvP, which I'll do videos in the future. I had previously done a farming one and I'll put a link in the description if you're interested in that one. Next, I'll define my rankings for each tier. For S tier, there's an unfair advantage, high damage, or must-have support. For A tier, that means it's very strong, but not as good as S tier. I'd highly recommend if you don't have the requirements for the S tier class to try these classes. For B tier, it's a good class, but lacks advantages over the S or A tier classes. I'd recommend this if you like the class's design and maybe prefer to play this for fun or for the memes. Next, for C tier, I would not recommend this class. For D, I would call this trash level, and I hope the devs will buff the classes here. These are ones that I definitely do not recommend. In general, I have some strong preferences I'd like to bring up. First, for damage, I prefer continuous high DPS over one-shotting classes. Especially for legend mode, continuous high DPS is the most important way to clear these quickly. Next, for both support and damage classes, survivability is an important factor. Lastly, I do have some strong bias against magic classes. Magic classes are very strong in PvP, but most magic classes do not do well in PvE. Especially for new players, I don't recommend magic classes in general if you're focusing on PvE. First, with the exception of soul binders, you can't take advantage of the size damage modifiers. You can't use the Minora's card, which is a huge damage boost for physical damage users. You also can't use damage to element modifiers. For example, you can't use the Seroma card to deal 15% damage to water monsters. You can only use racial cards, for example using the Abysmal Knight card against MVPs or the Peko Peko Egg card to Formless Race. That removes a lot of cheap options for magic users, which I believe makes these classes less friendly for free-to-play or new players. Next, many classes are stuck to particular elements. When you compare that with physical classes which can often convert to elements with elemental converters, that is a big disadvantage. Soulbinder is a magic class that can convert to any elements. Hopefully in the future the devs will give the magic classes some more advantages in PvE. Next are the tier list rankings, starting with rank D. First is the class Hala. It's great for PvP but not for PvE. Poison skills also don't give her a big advantage over many bosses. Stealing attribute points don't really affect the bosses. If you could disrupt their casting, it would have been good. If you want your summons to attack bosses, go Begetter instead. Next is Chronomancer. It's great for PvP, but not for PvE. The chance to proc bolts just isn't good enough, especially if you compare that with Taekwon, whose proc skills hit really hard. The devs attempted to fix this with the upcoming Jormungandr class, whose proc skills hit much harder than Chronomancer. So I am doubtful that Chronomancer will be buffed for PvE in the future. Next is Blade Soul, which is great for PvP but not for PvE. Auto attack will be outclassed by Taekwon, and your poison skills don't have a big advantage over many bosses. The unfairness of Soul Depravity insta-killing at a certain HP also doesn't work against bosses either. Next is Phantom Dancer, great for PvP but not for PvE. The auto attack got some great buffs with the tier 2 weapon recently, but the combo arrow just isn't strong enough. That needs to scale higher so the proc is worth it. This class is definitely outclassed by auto attack Taekwon. Next is Luna or Solar. Raging Storm just isn't good enough. The damage multiplier is too low despite the recent rune improvement Storm and Rain, which gives a 30% chance to cast again. Also, people used to use Doomsday for Echoing Corridor, but this has been fixed to prevent the abuse against mobs not being able to damage you. If you want continuous AoE DPS, then Novice Guardian or Rathgricy are much better options. Next is Tyrant, which is great for PvP and farming, but not for PvE. The gun skill build has potential, but I find Gunslinger lacks big damage boosts for PvE. Maybe in the future when the bosses are affected by status effects, then it might be a bit better. But at least for now, if you want continuous AoE DPS, then Novice Guardian or Rathgricy would be much better options. Next is Inferno Armor. This does best with fire, and I'm mostly putting this in rank D because I don't see people using it for PvE. If you want a class that scales with both magic and physical attack, then Rathgricy would be a much better option and you aren't just stuck with fire. Next is Hulgrahen. I don't see people using this for PvE or boss hunting. I think this is only useful for PvP. Next is C tier. First is Dragon Fist. Being stuck to neutral or water for a Shura Strike is limiting. This class is okay for boss hunting, but in general not good enough for PvE. If you want burst damage, Lightbringer, Yamada, or Saitama would be much better options. Next is Arcane Master. This classic class is a bit too fair in my opinion. Skills have some cooldown to deal with and you need to charge up elemental orbs to cast certain skills. I believe Slayer killed this class in DPS potential and survivability when that came out, and finally Genos came out and destroyed any hope of this class being a competitive magic PvE class. Next is B tier. First is Thanatos. This class utilizes both magic and physical attacks, but unfortunately the attacks take too long to ramp up. Thanatos has the potential to hit hard, but it's definitely more on the meme side of PvE. I don't like that the phase damage takes too long to ramp up to phase 4, which does the most damage. Next is Stellar Hunter. It has potential but is a glass cannon and has no party buffs. If you have a teammate keeping the boss away from you, then this class does okay. I do see people using this for boss hunting still, which is why I put this in B instead of C. Next is Yamata. The recent release of the Highwind Pursuit Star 3rd line helps this class a lot, since your continuous DPS is greatly improved. Next is Soulbinder. I believe this is the best PvE new class for magic. There is a bit of a setup compared to some other classes, but it's still very good. However, this class is able to convert to any element, which gives you a huge advantage over other magic classes, and the nuke Esma scales very well too. I do think this class lacks continuous DPS when compared with Slayer or Genos. Next is Slayer. I've only played this on my beta account, as I don't have it on my main account. This was a class that was tough to decide whether this was B or A rank, although I ended up putting this in B. The reason is I don't really see people using this for PvE, especially since the release of Genos. The good thing about this class is you don't need to charge up elemental orbs to do great damage like Arcane Masters, however the damage still isn't there. I do like the survivability of the power of Lord of Nightmare, which gives you 8 seconds of anti-death. Using my whale account on the beta server, it still doesn't feel strong enough to be A tier. Also, this was an event only class, so it's unavailable to newer players until they bring back the event. Next are A tier classes. First is Nidhogg. If you have a saint in your party already, then Nidhogg is a great addition to the party since it can add some additional buffs. Twilight of the Gods, which turns teammates into dragons for 6 seconds, can bypass the high demi-human reduction in legend mode. This provides some great bursts. Also, her Fetter's core hero skill can provide a lot of damage at level 7 since it can auto-cast Streamers of Fallen Knight against the target when your party members attack. Also, she can provide another anti-fatal through Savior's Flower. I think Nidhogg is good for supporting one particularly strong DPS, whereas Saint is better for the overall party. If you want to help someone carry, then Nidhogg is definitely a great addition. Next is Divine Avenger. The ability to taunt and survive is vital for clearing some of the toughest legend instances in this game. Thanatos Tower Legend is the classic one where Divine Avengers help distract the Valkyrie on floor 1. For Legend Museum 2F, distracting the Rook with Taunt can also help save teammates from dying. Also lastly for Museum 3F, taunting the multiple bosses is vital for stopping the bosses from interfering with your party as they focus on one at a time, especially with dealing with Nuka. Next is Lightbringer. This was a tough call between A and B rank. I put this in A rank because I believe this is the best free-to-play burst class due to the Pioneer and Machine Revolution combo. This is great for one-shotting low-level bosses on the MVP board and dealing with bosses in the lower-level instances. This is a great starter class for those looking for burst in the game. Next is Spirit Whisperers. Often known as Dorums, they got a lot of buffs for both magic and physical builds. I'm glad the devs are giving so much love for this class. For magic, the continuous DPS makes this great for instances, but not for boss hunting. Unfortunately, there is a bit of setup required to get maximum damage. I'd collaborated with Zach for a Magic Dorm guide if you're interested in this class. Next for physical, the Wand Dorm got a big boost. This came from the Lunatic Carrot Pound cooldown from the tier 5 weapon, and the Beast Storm Star Rune which gives Savage Soul more damage. In addition, Dorm in general has a lot of utility skills which can help your party as well. Next is Ryumaru, also known as Wataru. This remains in A rank due to its ability to nuke bosses on the MVP board and in certain instances like Thanatos Tower floor 2. For continuous DPS, this class isn't the greatest. I personally think that once Saitama came out, it outshines this class as both a nuker and as a DPS class. Saitama is able to spam his one-shot skill faster and doesn't suffer a downside of having no SP after casting the skill, as you would with Wataru when casting Dragon King's Rage. One big downside is this was an event-only class, so it's unavailable to newer players until they bring back this event, although it did come back last year. Next is S-tier classes. Saint is the best support class in the game. It is a must-have for parties and has many vital skills to keep the DPS alive. It also has a lot of survivability skills, so you can also keep alive as well. After all, how good is a support if you're dead? I think the biggest downside of this class is because people are so reliant on you, you really need to know how instances work. So you definitely need to follow some guides so you understand how the mechanics work, so you don't end up dying or causing grief to your teammates because you're not giving them the Faith Prey invulnerability at the wrong time. Next are Ruin Masters. The auto attack Ruin Master is the late game powerhouse and also is known as Dev's son, since the damage multiplier is insane. This class takes advantage of both attack, and magic defense to do crazy damage. However, I don't think this class feels very unfair unless you have very high deposits, such as over 70%. Invest heavily in your adventure handbook to make sure you have high raw attack, high raw magic attack, and high magic defense. Also, you would need the plus 15 heavens to truly unlock this class potential, and that is very hard to snap. Next is Begetter. This class got big buffs early this year to make your homunculi not die, and now they do crazy damage as well. This class can dish out some insane continuous DPS, although it's not that great for burst damage. Since the homunculus can't die, these are ideal for dealing with bosses that reflect damage or can insta-kill you if you get too close, such as the Rook in Legend Museum 2F. To play this class, you do need the third line for the Void Summon rune to have a second homunculus and for them not to die. Next is Apocalypse, which is commonly known as Taekwon. This class got auto attack proccing right. The proc damage is insane and you can convert to any element. I see people using Taekwon quite a lot in both instances and boss hunting, especially against Apocs. I think the only downside is their lack of survivability when compared with other classes like Rathgricy and Novice Guardian. I think this class is particularly strong in Legend instances where it can convert to Ghost, so it can deal with certain bosses, especially for Museum 3F, where you can deal with bosses of various elements, and go through White Barrier as well since you can convert to Ghost. To play this class, you do need the third line rune for the Body and Heart rune to have your auto attack proc skills without the delay. Next is Novice Guardian. This class is one of the best free to play classes out there since you have high DPS AoE and move quickly, making this ideal for instances and boss hunting. You also have an auto-res rune for great survivability. To play this class, you do need two runes. The Ruthless Slash rune, which lets you completely ignore defense, which is one of the most busted runes in the game, since you don't need to invest in ignore defense anymore. You also need the third line for the Swift Star rune to double your damage by having a cart tornado around you. Besides the rune requirements, you do need to deal with the awful wind damage reduction due to the devs trying to nerf this class in legend instances. Next is Saitama. In my opinion, this is the best one-shotter in the game, and you can do very well in weekly instances. Many burst classes have a downside, whereas Saitama just continuously does another attack after, which gives it some really great DPS as well. Your burst also ignores defense, so you can adjust your gear accordingly. Unlike many other one-shot classes, you can convert to any element you want, making double damage much easier. You also don't have any downside like using up all your SP once you cast your one-shot skill. Also, this class is fantastic in Oracle Dungeon because Intuition of Hero lets you bypass Lolly Rui's stun so you can deal with her while everyone else is in stun lock. This is my main, and if this event ever comes back, I'd make this a must buy. Unfortunately, this class is an event only class, so hopefully it will come back in the future, and you ideally also have all these second line ruins to play this effectively, so you have the 7/7 core hero skill. Next is Genos. This is the best magic DPS class in the game. It roasts the competition for damage, and it scales well despite the primary skills being stuck to wind and fire. Rechargeable Incendiary Gun deals continuous DPS, which is really the solution to the bad cooldown time for magic classes. The biggest downside is this was an event only class, so it's unavailable to newer players until they bring back the event. Genos has great survivability due to his core hero skill, since you won't die right away, and if you don't take a certain number of hits, then you'll be able to come back to life again. Finally is Rathgricy. When it comes to busted and unfair classes, this has it all. It has high DPS, which is convertible, and you have the Valkyrie skill, which can turn you into an angel so you can bypass the demi-human reduction, and you also get an endure effect. But that's not all, you get lifesteal and a huge skill damage boost. Valkyrie is the best skill in this game in my opinion. Finally, you have 4 HP shields from Divine Wing Armor that prevents you from getting insta-killed. It's almost like you have 4 HP relics. This really gives you some unreal survivability. The biggest downside is you need these second line ruins to give her level 7 core passive skill. Without it, you can't spam the Valkyrie skill, which is what makes this class very unfair. If you have her level 7 core hero skill, even with low deposits, this class is crazy strong. I'll put a link in the description where I used a 15% deposit account and free to play gear to solo DPS Legend Isles 1F, which I think is really impossible for many other classes. Personally, I think this is the best non-event class for most players who want to deal some incredible DPS and have an unfair class. What do you think? Do you agree with the tier list? Let me know in the comments section. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Here's a video that I would recommend, and if you want to see more tier lists, check out this playlist over here.